Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today I want to discuss if we're heading into the biggest bubble in history. And I want to preface this by saying I don't think it's a good thing. It's certainly not my base case scenario that I think is the most likely to happen at the moment. But the purpose of this channel is to discuss all possible scenarios and try to keep you guys ahead of the game. And lately I'm seeing a few things which have me a little bit worried and questioning if we've learnt anything from previous market cycles. Now, I've gone back and I love researching history, particularly the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression. Now, what led to all that was retail speculation. For the first time, retail investors could buy shares. It became really cool to do so. Everyone was into it, really widespread. And that hasn't quite happened with crypto, I don't think. Now, in some countries, it took hold more than others, and a lot of people were talking about it. But think about how easy it is to get into crypto these days compared to even 12 months ago. So many apps floating around. If we have another market cycle, it's literally only going to be a click or two away for people to invest in crypto. And when I was watching this 1929 documentary, people were obsessed with the little stock tape at the time, which came out and had all the stock prices, and people were surrounding that on a cruise ship to check their stocks. And it really made me think of crypto and people checking their portfolio. Now, since then, we've had the dot-com bubble and the GFC, and there's a couple of things to take note of. There's now more money in circulation than ever before. Central banks really went crazy to pour liquidity into the system since the GFC, and we know that back in the dot-com bubble, it led to a $7 or $8 trillion bubble. Now, crypto only grew to 1/10 of that size during its last run-up, so it could easily grow to that size or even bigger with all the money that's floating around, and fundamentals go out the window. This happens for no rhyme or reason, and again, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it's certainly a possibility, and we still see it in tech stocks today, even on listed companies. They're trading at these wild valuations on possible future earnings and what they might be worth in the future, and that can certainly apply to crypto. Now, during the last run-up, we had a lot of, retail investors, mum and dads, but I was getting a lot of questions on how do you buy $1,000 or $10,000? Lately, I'm starting to get how do I put 50, 100,000 or more into the market? And the demographics certainly shifting, and there's talk of Wall Street getting on board. We're starting to see institutions invest in certain sectors of the blockchain space, but I think it's that high net worth client and that slightly different demographic that now has a way to safely invest in crypto. So lost coins obviously take coins out of circulation and reduce the supply. But now we have a way for someone that wants to pump in $100 million to not learn about private keys and how to store a hardware wallet. They can go through someone else, they have custody, and it's insured, which is really important. That really is a game changer that wasn't available during that last bull run. And once it becomes fashionable or cool to own Bitcoin, particularly in some cultures, like think about the sheikhs in the Middle East with all their car collections. What happens if it becomes really cool to talk about how many Bitcoins you own? And we often get fixated on what's happening in the US or Australia, but this really can be a global phenomenon. And all these wealthy people get to control the news and the narrative. And we're seeing a bit of a battle at the moment between who likes crypto and who doesn't. But that can change pretty quickly once people have a vested interest and they're happy with the amount of crypto they want to own, and think of it as they want to pump their own bags. The next thing I want to talk about is international FOMA in terms of countries and governments, and we see sanctions and people wanting to leave the SWIFT system, Russia and China buying up gold and dumping bonds, developing countries suffering hyperinflation and citizens turning to Bitcoin, and we see trade already being sold in Bitcoin. So one by one, this can really start to gather steam and Bitcoin becomes recognized as some sort of global currency very, very quickly, and it already kind of is happening very slowly. Now, don't think that those high net worths and countries, they're not immune from FOMO. And just like we saw some of the smartest people in the world during the GFC pile into those investment products, those credit default swaps and all that without doing any research. So there's always a search for yield. What's the next hottest investment? How can I get return on my money? And human emotion doesn't change. That feeling of excitement that I've been tweeting about lately when Bitcoin jumps $1,000 in a day, that's very addictive, and people are going to want that feeling. And I think very much retail can be sucked into a far greater degree than what we saw in the last run. Now, again, I'm just raising these points to start the conversation. Let me know what you guys think. This can all change on a dime with some bad news or whatnot, but having seen where we've come from, having been through a lot of these cycles before, and having gone through the crypto winter recently, and looking around and seeing people still pump in millions of dollars to initial exchange offerings, they sell out in seconds. It values the company at $100 million because they're only selling 5% of their tokens. I really start to think, geez, have we learnt anything? And fundamentals just don't count. People aren't doing them. It's all about speculation and, a bit of fun money. And as I said, there's so much money out there, and there's a different demographic starting to come in that can really drive up prices to far beyond fair value. And even in the dot-com bubble, we saw companies literally saying that they don't have a business model or any working product, and just, having these huge IPOs back in the day. So that sort of mindset of getting rich quickly off, future possible outcomes, it really hasn't changed. In terms of apps and wallets, as I said before, it's so easy to onboard. There's so many good ones out there now. The Lightning Network is getting easier to use. So the technology and the user interfaces are getting friendlier and friendlier. It's literally a couple of clicks away for someone to buy their first Bitcoin and get started on the journey. And that spreads like wildfire once people are confident that the bottom's in for Bitcoin and it's going to make new highs. Think about all that retail FOMO and people realizing that, hey, it wasn't a bubble, that wasn't a last cycle. Bitcoin is going to go on another run, and that's when the FOMO really kicks in. And maybe we go to $100,000 Bitcoin and then have a 90% correction down to say 10,000, and then we stay there for a couple of years and it flushes out all the bad projects, because the pace we're going on now, those bad projects haven't been flushed out, and they're all starting to still piggyback off Bitcoin and go up in price. There's things that are tremendously overvalued that still don't have working products, and they've been around for 2 years now. They still don't have a good wallet, and all this rhyme and reason goes out the window for 90% of people who just want to speculate. They just want to have it on an exchange. They just want to make money because they've heard about their friends making money and so on. Finally, I want to talk about Bitcoin from a technological standpoint. Now, Bitcoin and altcoin have these cycles when the dominance goes up and down, but Bitcoin, if it adopts privacy, there's talk of smart contracts, it can absorb features off other coins, which I've spoken about a lot, and implement them. And at the moment, I still see it being the market leader because it has that store of value aspect. So, there's cheaper coins, there's faster coins out there, all that sort of thing, but it's the most secure, it's the widest known, and it's the one that is at the moment a speculative store of value because of the volatility. But if we continue to have these run-ups in price, people are going to want to park money in it. So let me know your thoughts below. Are we heading into the biggest bubble in history? Does rhyme and reason go out the window? People have learned nothing throughout crypto winter, and this cycle is about to start all over again. Or is this going to drag on a bit further until we've washed out all the bad projects as part of a healthy business cycle? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share these videos around. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.